Welcome back for the next part of Number the Stars by Lois Lowry. Chapter 4. It Will Be a Long Night. Alone in the apartment while Mama was out shopping with Kirsty, Anne-Marie and Ellen were sprawled on the living room floor playing with paper dolls. They had cut the dolls from Mama's magazines, old ones she had saved from past years. The paper ladies had old-fashioned hairstyles and clothes, and the girls had given them names from Mama's favorite book. Mama had told Anne-Marie and Ellen the entire story of Gone with the Wind, and the girls thought it was much more interesting and romantic than the king and queen tales that Kirsty loved. Come, Melanie, Anne-Marie said, walking her doll across the edge of the rug. Let's dress for the ball. All right, Scarlet, I'm coming, Ellen replied in a sophisticated voice. She was a talented performer. She often played the leading roles in the school dramatics. Games of imagination were always fun when Ellen played. The door opened and Kirsty stomped in, her face tear-stained and glowering. Mama followed her with an exasperated look and set a package down on the table. I won't, Kirsty sputtered. I won't ever wear them, not if you chain me in a prison and beat me with sticks. Anne-Marie giggled and looked questioningly at her mother. Mrs. Johansson sighed. I bought Kirsty some new shoes, she explained. She's outgrown her old ones. Goodness, Kirsty, Ellen said. I wish my mother would get me some new shoes. I love new things, and it's so hard to find them in the stores. Not if you go to the fish store, Kirsty bellowed. But most mothers wouldn't make their daughters wear ugly fish shoes. Kirsten, Mama said soothingly, you know it wasn't a fish store. We were lucky to find shoes at all. Kirsty sniffed. Show them, she commanded. Show Anne-Marie and Ellen how ugly they are. Mama opened the package and took out a pair of little girl's shoes. She held them up, and Kirsty looked away in disgust. You know there's no leather anymore, Mama explained, but they found a way to make shoes out of fish skin. I don't think these are too ugly. Anne-Marie and Ellen looked at the fish skin shoes. Anne-Marie took one in her hand and examined it. It was odd looking. The fish scales were visible, but it was a shoe, and her sister needed shoes. It's not so bad, Kirsty, she said, lying a little. Ellen turned the other one over in her hand. You know, she said, it's only the color that's ugly. Green, Kirsty wailed. I will never, ever wear green shoes. In our apartment, Ellen said, my father has a jar of black ink. Would you like these shoes better if they were black? Kirsty frowned. Maybe I would, she said finally. Well, then, Ellen told her, tonight, if your mama doesn't mind, I'll take the shoes home and ask my father to make them black for you with his ink. Mama laughed. I think that would be a fine improvement. What do you think, Kirsty? Kirsty pondered. Could he make them shiny? She asked. I want them shiny. Ellen nodded. I think he could. I think they'll be quite pretty, black and shiny. Kirsty nodded. All right, then, she said. But you mustn't tell anyone that they're fish. I don't want anyone to know. She took her new shoes, holding them disdainfully, and put them on the chair. Then she looked with interest at the paper dolls. Can I play too? Kirsty asked. Can I have a doll? She squatted beside Anne-Marie and Ellen on the floor. Sometimes Anne-Marie thought Kirsty was such a pest, always butting in. But the apartment was small. There was no other place for Kirsty to play. And if they told her to go away, Mama would scold. Here, Anne-Marie said, and handed her a cut-out little girl. We're playing Gone with the Wind. Melanie and Scarlet are going to the ball. You can be Bonnie. She's Scarlet's daughter. Kirsty danced her doll up and down happily. I'm going to the ball, she announced in a high pretend voice. Ellen giggled. A little girl wouldn't go to a ball. Let's make them go someplace else. Let's make them go to Tivoli. Tivoli, Anne-Marie began to laugh. That's in Copenhagen. Gone with the Wind is in America. Tivoli, 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 little Kirsty sang, twirling her doll in a circle. It doesn't matter, because it's only a game anyway, Ellen pointed out. Tivoli can be over there by that chair. Come, Scarlet, she said, using her doll voice. We shall go to Tivoli to dance and watch the fireworks, and maybe there will be some handsome men there. Bring your silly daughter Bonnie, and she can ride the carousel. Anne-Marie grinned and walked her Scarlet toward the chair that Ellen had designated as Tivoli. She loved Tivoli Gardens, in the heart of Copenhagen. Her parents had taken her there often when she was a little girl. She remembered the music and the brightly colored lights, the carousel and ice cream, and especially the magnificent fireworks in the evenings. The huge colored splashes and bursts of lights in the evening sky. I remember the fireworks best of all, she commented to Ellen. Me too, Kirsty said. I remember the fireworks. Silly, Anne-Marie scoffed. You never saw the fireworks. Tivoli Gardens was closed now. The German occupation forces had burned part of it, perhaps as a way of punishing the fun-loving Danes for their light-hearted pleasures. Kirsty drew herself up, her small shoulders stiff. I did too, she said belligerently. It was my birthday. I woke up in the night and I could hear the booms, and there were lights in the sky. Mama said it was fireworks for my birthday. Then Anne-Marie remembered. Kirsty's birthday was late in August, and that night, only a month before, she too had been awakened and frightened by the sound of explosions. Kirsty was right. The sound in the sky Kirsty was right. The sky in the southeast had been ablaze, and Mamma had comforted her by calling it a birthday celebration. Imagine such fireworks for a little girl 5 years old, Mamma had said, sitting on their bed, holding the dark curtain aside to look through the window at the lighted sky. The next evening's newspaper had told the sad truth. The Danes had destroyed their own naval fleet, blowing up the vessels one by one as the Germans approached to take over the ships for their own use. How sad the king must be, Anne-Marie said. Anne-Marie had heard Mamma say to Papa when they read the news. How proud, Papa had replied. It had made Anne-Marie feel sad and proud, too, to picture the tall, aging king, perhaps with tears in his blue eyes, as he looked at the remains of his small navy, which now lay submerged and broken in the harbor. I don't want to play any more, Ellen, she said suddenly, and put her paper doll on the table. I have to go home anyway, Ellen said. I have to help Mama with the house cleaning. Thursday is our new year. Did you know that? Why is it yours? Asked Kirsty. Isn't it our new year too? No, it's the Jewish New Year. That's just for us. But if you want, Kirsty, you can come that night and watch Mama light the candles. Anne-Marie and Kirsty had often been invited to watch Mrs. Rosen light the Sabbath candles on Friday evenings. She covered her head with cloth and said a special prayer in Hebrew as she did so. Anne-Marie always stood very quietly, awed to watch. Even sorry. Even Kirsty, usually such a chatterbox, was always still at the time. They didn't understand the words or the meaning, but they could feel what a special time it was for the Rosens. Yes, Kirsty agreed happily. I'll come and watch your Mama light the candles, and I'll wear my new black shoes. But this time was to be different. Leaving for school on Thursday with her sister, Anne-Marie saw the Rosens walking to synagogue early in the morning, dressed in their best clothes. She waved to Ellen, who waved happily back. Lucky Ellen, Anne-Marie said to Kirsty. She doesn't have to go to school today. But she probably has to sit very, very still like we do in church, Kirsty pointed out. That's no fun. That afternoon, Mrs. Rosen knocked on their door but didn't come inside. Instead, she spoke for a long time in a hurried, tense voice to Anne-Marie's mother in the hall. When Mama returned, her face was worried, but her voice was cheerful. Girls, she said, we have a nice surprise. I need a drink. Tonight, Ellen will come to stay overnight to be our guest for a few days. It isn't often we have a visitor. Kirsty clapped her hands in delight. But Mama, Anne-Marie said in dismay, it's their new year. They were going to have a celebration at home. Ellen told me that her mother managed to get a chicken someplace, and she was going to roast it, their first roast chicken in a year or more. Their plans have changed, Mama said briskly. Mr. and Mrs. Rosen have been called away to visit some relatives, so Ellen will stay with us. Now, let's get busy and put clean sheets on your bed, Kirsty. Kirsty, you may sleep with Mama and Papa tonight, and we'll let the big girls giggle together by themselves. Kirsty pouted and it was clear that she was about to argue. Mama will tell you a special story tonight, her mother said. One just for you. About a king? Kirsty asked dubiously. About a king, if you wish, Mama replied. All right, then, but there must be a queen, too, Kirsty said. Though Mrs. Rosen had sent her chicken to the Johansons, and Mama made a lovely dinner large enough for second helpings all around, it was not an evening of laughter and talk. Ellen was silent at dinner. She looked frightened. Mama and Papa tried to speak of cheerful things, but it was clear that they were worried, and it made Anne-Marie worried too. Only Kirsty was unaware of the quiet tension in the room. Swinging her feet in their newly blackened and shiny shoes, she chattered and giggled during dinner. Early bedtime tonight, little one, Mama announced after the dishes were washed. We need extra time for the long story I promised about the king and queen. She disappeared with Kirsty to the bedroom. What's happening? Anne-Marie asked when she and Ellen were alone with Papa in the living room. Something's wrong. What is it? Oh, my nose is itchy. Sorry. Papa's face was troubled. I wish that I could protect you children from this knowledge, he said quietly. Ellen, you already know. Now we must tell Anne-Marie. He turned to her and stroked her hair with his gentle hand. This morning, at the synagogue, the rabbi told his congregation that the Nazis have taken the synagogue lists of all the Jews, where they live and what their names are. Of course, the Rosens were on the list along with many others. Why? Why do they want those names? They plan to arrest all the Danish Jews. They plan to take them away. And we have been told that they may come tonight. I don't understand. Take them where? Her father shook his head. We don't know where, and we don't really know why. They call it relocation. We don't even know what that means. We only know that it is wrong, and it is dangerous, and we must help. Anne-Marie was stunned. She looked at Ellen and saw that her best friend was crying silently. Where are Ellen's parents? We must help them too. We couldn't take all three of them. If the Germans came to search our apartment, it would be clear that the Rosens were here. One person we can hide, not three. So Peter has helped Ellen's parents to go elsewhere. We don't know where. Ellen doesn't know either, but they are safe. Ellen sobbed aloud and put her face in her hands. Papa put his arm around her. They are safe, Ellen. I promise you that. You will see them again quite soon. Can you try hard to believe my promise? Ellen hesitated, nodded, and wiped her eyes with her hand. But Papa, Anne-Marie said, looking around the small apartment, with its few pieces of furniture, the fat stuffed sofa, the table and chairs, the small bookcase against the wall, you said that we would hide her. How can we do that? Where can she hide? Papa smiled. That part is easy. It will be as your mama said. You two will sleep together in your bed, and you will giggle and talk and tell secrets to each other. And if anyone comes, Ellen interrupted him. Who might come? Will it be soldiers, like the ones on the corners? Anne-Marie remembered how terrified Ellen had looked the day when the soldiers had questioned them on the corner. I really don't think anyone will. But it never hurts to be prepared. If anyone should come, even soldiers, you two will be sisters. You are together so much, it will be easy for you to pretend that you are sisters. He rose and walked to the window. He pulled the lace curtain aside and looked down into the street. Outside it was beginning to grow dark. Soon they would have to draw the black curtains that all Danes had on their windows. The entire city had to be completely darkened at night. In a nearby tree a bird was singing. Otherwise it was quiet. It was the last night of September. Go now and get into your nightgowns. It will be a long night. Anne-Marie and Ellen got to their feet. Papa suddenly crossed the room and put his arms around them both. He kissed the top of each head. Anne-Marie's blonde one, which reached to his shoulder, and Ellen's dark hair, the thick curls braided, as always, into pigtails. Don't be frightened, he said to them softly. Once I had 3 daughters. Tonight I am proud to have 3 daughters again. Chapter 5. Who is the dark-haired one? Do you really think anyone will come? Ellen asked nervously, turning to Anne-Marie in the bedroom. Your father doesn't think so. Of course not. They're always threatening stuff. They just like to scare people. Anne-Marie took her nightgown from the hook in the closet. Anyway, if they did, it would give me a chance to practice acting. I'd just pretend to be Lise. I wish I were taller, though. Ellen stood on tiptoe, trying to make herself tall. She laughed at herself, and her voice was more relaxed. You were great as the Dark Queen in the school play last year, Anne-Marie told her. You should be an actress when you grow up. My father wants me to be a teacher. He wants everyone to be a teacher, like him. But maybe I could convince him that I should go to acting school. Ellen stood on tiptoe again and made an imperious gesture with her arm. I am the Dark Queen, she intoned dramatically. I have come to command the night. You should try saying, I am Lise Johansson, Anne-Marie said, grinning. If you told the Nazis you were the Dark Knight, they'd haul you off to a mental institution. Ellen dropped her actress pose and sat down, with her legs curled under her on the bed. They won't really come here, do you think? She asked again. Anne-Marie shook her head. Not in a million years. She picked up her hairbrush. The girls found themselves whispering as they got ready for bed. There was no need, really, to whisper. They were, after all, supposed to be normal sisters, and Papa had said they could giggle and talk. The bedroom door was closed. But the night did seem somehow different from a normal night, and so they whispered. How did your sister die, Anne-Marie? Ellen asked suddenly. I remember when it happened, and I remember the funeral. It was the only time I have ever been in a Lutheran church. But I never knew just what happened. I don't know exactly, Anne-Marie confessed. She and Peter were out somewhere together, and then there was a telephone call, and there had been an accident. Mama and Papa rushed to the hospital. Remember, your mama came and stayed with me and Kirsty? Kirsty was already asleep, and she slept right through everything. She was so little then. But I stayed up, and I was with your mother in the living room when my parents came home in the middle of the night, and they told me Lise had died. I remember it was raining, Ellen said sadly. It was still raining the next morning when Mama told me. Mama was crying, and the rain made it seem like as if the whole world was crying. Anne-Marie finished brushing her long hair and handed her hairbrush to her best friend. Ellen undid her braids, lifted her dark hair away from the thin gold chain she wore around her neck, the chain that held the Star of David, and began to brush her thick curls. I think it was partly because of the rain. They said she was hit by a car. I suppose the streets were slippery, and it was getting dark, and maybe the driver just couldn't see. Anne-Marie went on, remembering. Papa looked so angry. He made one hand into a fist and kept pounding it into the other hand. I remember the noise of it. Slam, slam, slam. Together they got into the wide bed and pulled up the covers. Anne-Marie blew out the candle and drew the curtains aside so that the open window near the bed let in some air. See that blue truck in the corner? She said, pointing through the darkness. Lots of Lisa's. Oh, that blue trunk in the corner, she said, pointing through the darkness. Lots of Lisa's things are in there, even her wedding dress. Mama and Papa have never looked at those things, not since the day they were packed away. Ellen sighed. She would have looked so beautiful in her wedding dress. She had such a pretty smile. I used to pretend that she was my sister, too. She would have liked that, Anne-Marie said. She loved you. That's the worst thing in the world, Ellen whispered, to be dead so young. I wouldn't want the Germans to take my family away, to make us live someplace else. But still, it wouldn't be as bad as being dead. Anne-Marie leaned over and hugged her. They won't take you away either, she said. Not your parents either. Papa promised that they were safe, and he always keeps his promises. And you are quite safe here with us. For a while they continued to murmur in the dark, but the murmurs were interrupted by yawns. Then Ellen's voice stopped, she turned over, and in a minute her breathing was quiet and slow. Anne-Marie stared at the window where the sky was outlined and a tree branch moved slightly in the breeze. Everything seemed very familiar, very comforting. Dangers were no more than odd imaginings, like ghost stories that children made up to frighten one another. Things that couldn't possibly happen. Anne-Marie felt completely safe here in her own home, with her parents in the next room and her best friend asleep beside her. She yawned contentedly and closed her eyes. It was hours later, but still dark, when she was awakened abruptly by the pounding on the apartment door. Anne-Marie eased the bedroom door open quietly, only a crack, and peeked out. Behind her, Ellen was sitting up, her eyes wide open. She could see Mama and Papa in their nightclothes moving about. Mama held a lighted candle, but as Anne-Marie watched, she went to a lamp and switched it on. It was so long a time since they had dared to use electricity. It was so long a time since they had dared to use the strictly rationed electricity after dark that the light in the room seemed startling to Anne-Marie, watching through the slightly open bedroom door. She saw her mother look automatically to the blackout curtains, making certain that they were tightly drawn. Papa opened the front door to the soldiers. "Is this the Johansson apartment?" A deep voice asked the question loudly in the terribly accented Danish. "Our name is on the door, and I see you have a flashlight," Papa answered. "What do you want? Is something wrong?" "I understand you are a friend of your neighbors, the Rosens, Mrs. Johansson," the soldier said angrily. "Sophie Rosen is my friend, this is true," Mama said quietly. Please, could you speak more quiet? Please, could you speak more softly? My children are sleeping." "Then you will be so kind as to tell me where the Rosens are?" He made no effort to lower his voice. "I assume they are at home sleeping. It is 4 in the morning after all," Mama said. Anne-Marie heard a soldier stalk across the living room toward the kitchen. From her hiding place in the narrow sliver of open doorway, she could see the heavy uniformed man, a holstered pistol at his waist, in the entrance to the kitchen, peering in toward the sink. Another German voice said, "The Rosens' apartment is empty. We are wondering if they might be visiting their good friends, the Johansons." "Well," said Papa, moving slightly so that he was standing in front of Anne-Marie's bedroom door, and she could see nothing except the dark blur of his back. "As you see, you are mistaken. There is no one here but my family." "You will not object if we look around?" The voice was harsh, and it was not a question. "It seems we have no choice," Papa replied. "Please don't wake my children," Mama requested again. "There is no need to frighten little ones." The heavy booted feet moved across the floor again and into the other bedroom. A closet door opened and closed with a bang. Anne-Marie eased her bedroom door closed silently and stumbled through the darkness to the bed. "Ellen," she whispered urgently, "take your necklace off." Ellen's hands flew to her neck. Desperately, she began trying to unhook the tiny clasp. Outside the bedroom door, the harsh voices and heavy footsteps continued. "I can't get it open," Ellen said frantically. "I never take it off. I can't even remember how to open it." Anne-Marie heard a voice just outside the door. "Who is in here?" "Shh," her mother replied. "My daughter's bedroom. They are sound asleep." "Hold still," Anne-Marie commanded. "This will hurt." She grabbed the little gold chain, yanked with all her strength, and broke it. As the door opened and light flooded into the bedroom, she crumpled it into her hand and closed her fingers tightly. Terrified, both girls looked up at 3 Nazi officers who entered the room. One of the men aimed a flashlight around the bedroom. He went to the closet and looked inside. Then, with a sweep of his gloved hand, he pushed to the floor several coats and a bathrobe that hung from pegs on the wall. I need another drink. There was nothing else in the room except the chest of drawers, the blue decorated trunk in the corner, and a heap of Kirsty's dolls piled in a small rocking chair. The flashlight beam touched each thing in turn. Angrily, the officers turned toward the bed. "Get up," he ordered. "Come out here." Trembling, the 2 girls rose from the bed and followed him, brushing past the 2 remaining officers in the doorway to the living room. Anne-Marie looked around. These 3 uniformed men were different from the ones on the street corners. The street soldiers were often young, sometimes ill at ease, and Anne-Marie remembered how the giraffe had, for a moment, let his harsh pose slip and had smiled at Kirsty. But these men were older, and their faces were set with anger. Her parents were standing beside each other, their faces tense, but Kirsty was nowhere in sight. Thank goodness that Kirsty slept through almost everything. If they had wakened her, she would be wailing, or worse, she would be angry, and her fists would fly. Your names? The officer barked. Anne-Marie Johansson. And this is my sister. Quiet! Let her speak for herself. Your name? He was glaring at Ellen. Ellen swallowed. Lise, she said, and cleared her throat. Lise Johansson. The officer stared at them grimly. Now, Mama said with a strong voice, you have seen that we are not hiding anything. May my children go back to bed? The officer ignored her. Suddenly he grabbed a handful of Ellen's hair. Ellen winced. He laughed scornfully. You have a blonde child sleeping in the other room, and you have this blonde daughter. He gestured toward Anne-Marie with his head. Where do you get the dark-haired one? He twisted the lock of Ellen's hair. From a different father? From the milkman? Papa stepped forward. Don't speak to my wife in such a way. Let go of my daughter, or I will report you for such treatment. Or maybe you got her someplace else, the officer continued with a sneer, from the Rosens. For a moment no one spoke. Then Anne-Marie, watching in panic, saw her father move swiftly to a small bookcase and take out a book. He saw that he was holding the family photograph album. Very quickly he searched through its pages, found what he was looking for, and tore out 3 pictures from 3 separate pages. He handed them to the German officer, who released Ellen's hair. You will see each of my daughters, each with her name written on the photograph, Papa said. Anne-Marie knew instantly which photographs he'd chosen. The album had many snapshots, all the poorly focused pictures of school events and birthday parties. But it also contained a portrait, taken by a photographer, of each little girl as a tiny infant. Mama had written, in her delicate handwriting, the name of each baby daughter across the bottom of those photographs. She realized, too, with an icy feeling, why Papa had torn them from the book. At the bottom of each page, below the photograph itself, was written the date, and the real Lise Johansson had been born 21 years earlier. Kirsten Elizabeth, the officer read, looking at Kirsty's baby picture. He let the photograph fall to the floor. Anne-Marie, he read next, glanced at her, and dropped the second photograph. Lise Marguerite, he read finally, and stared at Ellen for a long, unwavering moment. In her mind, Anne-Marie pictured the photograph that he held. The baby, wide-eyed, propped against a pillow, her tiny hand holding a silver teething ring, her bare feet visible below the hem of an embroidered dress. The wispy curls, dark. The officer tore the photograph in half and dropped the pieces on the floor. Then he turned, the heels of his shiny boots grinding into the pictures, and left the apartment. Without a word, the other 2 officers followed. Papa stepped forward and closed the door behind him. Anne-Marie relaxed the clenched fingers of her right hand, which still clutched Ellen's necklace. She looked down and saw that she had imprinted the Star of David onto her palm. And that is where I will conclude for today. I don't know where I put my bookmark. So come back tomorrow for the next, what am I doing? About 27 pages a day. See you later.